Bonjour, je suis ravi de vous retrouver en salle de presse aujourd'hui, jeudi 3 septembre. Merci beaucoup de nous rejoindre ici dans notre salle de presse virtuelle et sur EBS. Nous avons quelques annonces à vous faire avant de passer à vos questions. Tout d'abord, une petite mise à jour de l'agenda de la présidente, Mme von der Leyen, qui recevra cet après-midi M. Dacian Ciolos, le président du groupe Renew Europe au Parlement européen. Je passe maintenant la parole à Viviane qui a une annonce concernant les investissements de la politique de cohésion en Roumanie. Viviane.
Merci beaucoup, Eric. Good afternoon. Today, the Commission has approved investments from the European cohesion policy for almost 1.5 billion euros for better transport networks and disaster management in Romania. 875 million euros will go into building the first stage of the Sibiu-Pitești motorway. This will be the first motorway crossing the Carpathian Mountains, enabling unhindered connectivity in Romania on the Rhine-Danube corridor of the Trans-European Transport Network TEN-T. The corridor will provide an uninterrupted link across Romania from the Black Sea port of Constanța to Nădlac on the Hungarian border, linking central and western Romania to the European motorways network. The project is expected to be finalized by 2026. The European Commission has today also approved financing from the Cohesion Fund for a project worth of 578 million euros to improve Romania's disaster response capacities. The investment will improve Romania's land-based, aerial and maritime response capacity through the purchase of new equipment as well as training of staff. It will better protect the population in emergencies and help Romania in complying with its international obligations as well as its national strategy on climate change and achieving economic growth with lower emissions. And for more information, as usual, in our daily news. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup Viviane. Je passe maintenant la parole à Johannes qui a de bonnes nouvelles concernant notre soutien aux chercheurs en début de carrière. Johannes.
Bonjour, Eric. And indeed, we have good news today for European researchers, for 436 of them, to be precise. They will each receive a European Research Council starting grant. The starting grants help early career researchers to build their own teams and carry out innovative projects across all scientific disciplines. So, for example, from vaccine research to climate change adaptation, or from nanoplastics to exploring the nature of dark matter of the universe. In total, 677 million euros will be granted to the laureates from Horizon 2020, and this funding is expected to some 2,500 jobs for postdoctoral fellows, PhD students, and other staff. And as usual, more information in the daily news.
Nous passons de la recherche à la recherche et l'espace. Et Sonia va vous faire une annonce, vous rappeler l'annonce concernant le lancement de satellite qui a eu lieu cette nuit. Sonia.
Good afternoon. Overnight at the European Spaceport in Kourou, the UPM-SAT-2 macro satellite was successfully launched aboard the Ariane Space's advanced Vega VV-16 carrier rocket. This launch is the first ever European launch of more than 50 satellites for more than 20 different customers. It kickstarted the first of 26 experiments selected as part of the EU's in-orbit demonstration and validation initiative funded under Horizon 2020. The other experiments will be launched over the period of 2020 and 2022. Designed and built by students from the Universitat Politécnica de Madrid, the macro satellite funded by the European Union placed in orbit 6 payloads developed by industry, space agencies, and research centers. The in-orbit demonstration and validation is a series of launches which will allow academia, research organizations, small and medium-sized enterprises, and larger industrial companies to effectively test new technologies in orbit, reducing the time to bring them to the market. This initiative will positively affect the competitiveness of Europe's place as global space leader while shaping solutions for the future. For more information, please check out our daily news. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Dernière annonce de notre part, notez qu'un briefing technique off the record pour les journalistes accrédités concernant le travail de la Commission pour sécuriser des doses de vaccins contre le coronavirus pour les Européens et le reste du monde aura lieu directement après ce rendez-vous de midi et je vous invite donc à rester connectés. Voilà, avec ceci, nous sommes prêts à passer à vos questions et je passe la parole à Alexander Fanta.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Alexander, hi.
Hi. I have a question on the new Austrian hate speech law, which was notified by the Commission, notified to the Commission last night. Well, it's a law against hate speech online, which, among other things, puts demands on online platforms such as Facebook to remove alleged hate speech within a few hours or face steep fines. Similar laws like the NetzDG in Germany or the Avia law in France have been criticized for putting a too strong incentive to remove content at the detriment of free speech. The Avia law, in fact, has been invalidated by the French Supreme Court, Constitutional Court. The Commission is expected to propose the Digital Services Act by the end of the year, which will address kind of the same issues, including hate speech. And the Commission has in the past voiced concerns about the possible fragmentation of the internal market due to too many member states passing their own laws to regulate platforms. So my question is, does the Commission think that it is helpful that Austria is making a law on hate speech just a few months before the proposal to the Digital Services Act will address the very same issue?
Alexander, I pass the floor to Johannes.
Thank you, Alexander, for the question and also for preempting the majority of what I could have possibly said at this stage about this law in your question already. So let me start by saying that, yes, we have received the notification from Austria under the Single Market Transparency Directive on three draft laws, which are aimed at protecting users and combating illegal content on online platforms. As you know, the Single Market Transparency Directive is a tool for assessing compliance of national draft regulations with EU law before their adoption. So this is a preventive technical mechanism providing the Commission, but also the Member States, with the opportunity to react to draft measures. So in compliance with our obligations under this directive, we will now assess the compatibility of the notified draft laws with EU law. The standstill period for this is 3 months, so it ends on the 3rd of December. So now, more generally, and you have hinted at that in your question, while we share, of course, the objective of fighting illegal content online, we strongly believe that actions taken at EU level are more effective in attaining this objective, taking into account the cross-border nature of these services and the need to offer a harmonized level of protections to users across the EU. For this reason, as you know, the Commission has announced its intention to update and harmonize the rules governing the provisions of digital services in the EU and the obligations of digital services provider, notably in the forthcoming Digital Services Act. And let me also conclude by saying that illegal content, such as hate speech, terrorist propaganda, or child abuse material has no place in the EU, online or offline. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johannes. Let me see if there are other questions for you on this issue. I would ask you to keep your hand raised only if your question pertains to this issue. I see that no, nobody has their hand raised anymore. Any other issues for Johannes whilst he is on line in this case. I do not see any, so I move to David Carretta. David, tu as la parole. Ah, David, malgré ton expérience, petit problème avec la source de ton micro aujourd'hui. Voilà, c'est bon. Non? Tu sembles avoir perdu la connexion. Nous reviendrons vers toi ultérieurement. Je passe la parole alors à Momchil.
Good afternoon. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Does the European Commission have any comment about what's happening in Bulgaria and force used by police against the demonstrators, against the protesters? Thank you.
Thank you, Momchil. I pass the floor to Christian on this issue.
Hi, Momchil. The Commission is aware of the protests in Bulgaria. We continue to follow the situation closely. We have always been clear that peaceful demonstrations are a fundamental right in every democratic country, and we support the right to peaceful protest. While national authorities are competent for law enforcement matters, any use of force must always be exercised in a proportionate manner.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Christian on this issue? Catherine, is it on this issue?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. I'd just like to ask Christian, does the Commission think that the police force in Bulgaria are using force in a proportionate manner?
Christian.
Catherine, I've just given you our position exactly on this matter. So any use of force must always be exercised in a proportionate manner. As you know, when it comes to possible issues, individual cases, this is, of course, for the relevant national authorities to look into them, as always.
Thank you, Christian. I see that Desislava has her hand raised. Is it on this? You need to press the speak button.
Yes. Yes, hello. I just wanted to know, will the Commission contact the Bulgarian authorities to discuss the recent situation? And what is the message of the Commission to the Bulgarian people at large and to the Bulgarian authorities?
Christian.
This is Lava. We are in contact with all the member states regularly, of course. And let me repeat that we have always been clear on demonstrations, that peaceful demonstrations are a fundamental right in democratic countries, that we support it. We support the right to peaceful protests. When it comes to law enforcement matters on the national scale, this is for national authorities. But we remind that any use of force must always be exercised in a proportionate manner.
Thank you, Christian. I see that there is one hand raised still. Kati Marini? Yanis from Kati Marini. Is it on this?
No.
Hold on, Yanis. Let's see then if there are other questions on this issue. I do not see any. Yanis, before we come to you, I would like to try to come back to David, who had asked the floor earlier. David, ça marche.
Oui, bonjour Eric, et merci pour
pour me donner la parole. C'est une question liée à deux sujets en fait, migration et Recovery Fund ou Next Generation EU, parce que la ministre des Affaires intérieures italienne a fait une interview. Elle demande que les pays qui ne participent pas à un système de relocalisation obligatoire des migrants ne reçoivent pas les fonds de Next Generation EU. Je me demandais si une conditionnalité de ce type est prévue par les propositions sur la table. Merci.
Merci pour ta question. Je n'ai pas d'informations sur des conditionnalités particulières sur les différents programmes. Je regarde Balázs qui me fait signe que non. Bien entendu, il faudrait regarder ce qu'il y a dans les propositions législatives qui sont déjà sur la table ou dans celles qui pourraient encore venir. Donc pour l'instant, pas possible pour nous de faire des commentaires sur ce point. Mais si nous avons des informations, nous reviendrons vers toi par l'intermédiaire de Balázs. Voilà, je repasse la parole maintenant à Yanis. Yanis, you have the floor. Are you still with us? Press speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Yanis.
Great, thank you. It's a foreign affairs question. I wanted to ask whether High Representative Borrell agrees with the views expressed by his special advisor, Ms. Natalie Tocci, who said that Greek-Turkish tensions in the Eastern Med are because of quote-unquote macho politics on both sides. This would be news to Greece, of course, which has seen its sovereign rights and its sovereignty questioned in word and in deed on a daily basis by Turkey for the last month. Thank you.
Thank you, Yanis. I pass the floor to Peter.
Thank you, Yanis. The views and positions conveyed by High Representative are formed in discussions with the EU member states. Ms. Tocci is not a policymaker of the EU. She is a special advisor among other functions she is holding, and her remarks you just quoted were made in her personal capacity, and they do not reflect the views of the European Union. They do not reflect the views and positions of the High Representative.
Thank you, Peter. We will now take further questions on international relations for Peter. So please only keep your hand raised if the question is for Peter. I see that Thomas from Frankfurt Allgemeine has his hand raised. Thomas, guten Morgen.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Eric. I have a question related to the Navalny case. The High Rep has issued a rather strongly worded statement on yesterday's confirmation that Navalny had been poisoned by a nerve agent, saying that this was a breach of international law. So my question is the High Rep considering to take further punitive measures against Russia in that context? Did any member state so far call for this? And could you please update us on another Russia-related sanction matter? Namely, in June, Germany asked for sanctions under the cyber regime against Russia. Where is the Council in its deliberations on that? Could you please give us an update? Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Indeed, let me slightly correct the expression used by the HRVP in his statement on the case of Alexei Navalny and the reports about him being poisoned by the chemical agent. He said that, in general, the use of chemical weapons under any circumstances is completely unacceptable and a breach of international law. Now, when it comes to what happened around the case of Mr. Navalny, at this stage, the EU, not only the HRVP, but all the EU leaders and the leaders of EU member states were very clear in their strong condemnation of the use of this chemical agent against Mr. Navalny. We called on Russia to investigate this in a transparent and thorough manner. And it's also in the interest of Russia to provide answers to the questions, because this type of chemical agent is not freely available. It was used on Russian territory against a Russian citizen. So it's very important that it's thoroughly investigated and that the answers are provided both to the Russian public and to the international public. Now, on your questions about possible punitive measures or sanctions, at this stage, there is no investigation to point out to who is responsible. We were very clear, the EU, in our statements and reaction, that we want to see those responsible to be brought to justice. But for that, the investigation needs to be launched and need to bring results. We are not there yet, so it's difficult to speak about punishment if you don't have the responsible at this stage. So the investigation needs to take place, and then the further steps will be decided accordingly. When it comes to the other part of your question, whether the member states have brought up something, we are at the start of the process. The news broke up yesterday. Our German partners published the report from the chemical analysis, and the discussions already started in the council formations about our reaction, about what to do with it, and looking deeply into the matter. So we are at the start. The process has been launched. The EU is following this very, very closely, because, as I said, and as the statements have said, we need answers. There needs to be investigation. So the EU is following closely, discussing this, seeing and watching what will be the next steps, and then act accordingly. And on your question regarding cyber regime, I think we announced already in August some first results of this. So I'm happy to send you the necessary communication then bilaterally.
Thank you, Peter. We will continue taking questions on external affairs. Patrizia, you have your hand raised, so go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. Do you hear me?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So I would like to have some reaction from the EU Commission on this announced sanctions against the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Fatou Bensouda. I would like to know if you have reactions on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrizia. In fact, it was two people who the American authorities listed for their sanction regime. On this, we will issue our reaction to this specific step later today or tomorrow. But in general, I can remind you, or I can recall the statement of the EU 27, or of the High Representative Josep Borrell on behalf of EU 27 from the 16th of July on the occasion of the Day of International Criminal Justice, which was on the 17th of July, where we, the European Union, the 27 member states of the European Union, basically agreed to state that the EU reiterates its commitment to uphold and defend the principles and values enshrined in the Rome Statute and the support of the EU for the International Criminal Court. The situation in the world nowadays is that we are still witnessing crimes against humanity, we are still witnessing crimes which continue to be perpetuated, and it's really necessary that the justice is done in the international scope. The International Criminal Court is facing persistent external challenges, and the European Union stands firm against all attempts to undermine the international system of criminal justice by hindering the work of its core institutions. And the International Criminal Court is one of the key institutions of the international justice. And we are committed to strengthen our support to ICC, because this is the key factor in fighting against impunity. So we are standing by the ICC, and we are not happy to see steps which are going against the activities of the ICC.
Thank you, Peter.
Can I have a follow-up?
Go ahead, Patrizia.
Thank you. But basically, are you going to do something concretely on this? Thank you.
Depends what you have in mind. You know that the EU in general is rejecting the extraterritoriality of sanctions adopted by third parties, by third states. So, of course, we don't agree with this step. And what we do, the European Union over a long period already is making consistent outreach with partners worldwide in order to support the ICC, so encouraging states to participate, to join, to ratify and implement the Rome Statute of the ICC. And if you have in mind concretely the United States, we are making outreach towards the United States also. Our delegation in Washington has made our concerns known already. You know that the decision from yesterday was announced a few weeks before, so there was also a statement from our side on this. So we conveyed our concerns regarding this to the American authorities, and we are having ongoing dialogue with them on this. And we are concerned about the growing use of sanctions, the threats of sanctions, and we are conveying the importance of fighting against impunity when it comes to the international justice. There are being crimes committed on the worldwide scale that need to be prosecuted, and the ICC, from the EU's point of view, is the key actor in delivering on bringing the justice.
Thank you, Peter. Let us continue on the issue of international relations, in particular this issue. Are there other questions for Peter on this specific issue? I see David with his hand raised again. David, c'est sur ce sujet?
C'est sur la Russie, si je peux retourner à la Russie.
Alors attends un petit peu, on va voir s'il y a d'autres questions. David, do you have a question on this specific point?
This is David Price. I have a question on the Russia business as well. So.
Okay, then we go back. I see no other questions on this issue, so we go back to David with his question on Russia.
Thank you, Eric. Peter, two questions. The first one, I'm wondering why you had to clarify that the violation of international law would be in general and not in this specific case. If you can explain a little bit more your clarification. Second, would you trust an investigation by Russia on this case, or the IREP think that an international investigation would be needed to have concrete results? Thank you.
Thank you, David. On the first one, I think it was just a short factual connection, clarification connected to the question by Thomas, just to make sure what is quoted correctly and in what context. But I mean, the statement is out, so you can see for yourself. So the issue is that there is an incident where a member of Russian public, who happens to be the leader of the opposition, was apparently tried to be assassinated by using a chemical agent. The chemical agent, which comes from a category of not really freely available agents or staff, but it's a military-grade agent. This happened apparently on Russian soil. We know what happened. We need to know how it happened. That's why it's important to have the investigation. Since the victim was a Russian citizen, and since it apparently happened on Russian soil, it's up to the Russian authorities to take up the investigation, bring clarifications, and offer answers to the domestic public and also to the international audience based on the huge reaction which this incident created, at least in our part of the world. And whether we trust the investigation by Russia, we would want to see the investigation which is thorough, which is transparent, which is independent, that means free of any interference. And we hope that we would be able to see the results of such investigation. I cannot preempt what would be the results. When we see the results, when we see the procedure, we will make our assessment then. I can only recall from the past that Mr. Navalny is not the first one who became victim of such cowardly and inhumane attack or assassination attempt. We've seen other people in Russia being killed, other opposition voices being silenced. I can remind only Anna Politkovskaya, Sergei Magnitsky, Boris Nemtsov. Did we have satisfactory results from the investigation of their assassinations? Well, the track record is not very satisfactory, but we want to see a credible, thorough investigation that brings clear answers to all the questions which this case arose and which this case brought in the Russian public and in the European public.
Thank you. David, do you have a comment? Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric. Yes, I have a follow-up because you've made a long list of investigations that didn't bring any results. So I will repeat my question. Would you trust an investigation by Russia on this case? And if I may, the Russian authorities have already said that there was no poisoning and there was no need for an investigation on this case. So you have already a lot of answer, I would say, and I would like to know if an international investigation would be more appropriate for the higher rep than a Russian one. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Again, on your question whether we would trust the Russian investigation, I don't want to preempt. I cannot preempt. I mean, that would be not serious. If the investigation will be launched, if it brings results, we will assess the results and we will also assess the procedures as we always do. So I cannot preempt now what we would say if something happens or something doesn't happen, and in the way it might happen or not happen. The Russian remarks you mentioned were, I think, of an older date, because most recently we've noticed that the Russian authorities have said that they would cooperate with the German partners on the findings of this medical report, or on the medical findings regarding Navalny case. So we see the signals of readiness, at least verbal readiness, to cooperate. So we will see how this cooperation will unfold and what the Russian authorities will start doing in the light of the new findings, because the new findings have been presented yesterday by our German partners. And as I said, they concern a Russian citizen, and they concern an incident that happened most likely on the Russian soil. So it's in the interest of Russia to launch the investigation, regardless of what were the previous statements or expressions in this regard. So we hope to see that. There is a huge demand from the international public, from the Russian public, to have the answers, because it is not normal, it is not acceptable that someone is a subject of assassination attempt with a chemical agent which is military grade and should not be freely available and circulating around in our societies or in the society on the Russian soil.
Thank you, Peter. I think this is very clear. We have called for an independent investigation, and as Peter says, we definitely hope that this independent investigation will bring the perpetrators of this act in front of the justice system. David Price, please, on this.
Thank you. Yes, David Price this time. Your democracy. I wonder, can you tell us if you have received a technical report from the German laboratories on this poison? As far as I recall, there are different types of Novichok chemicals, and it would be interesting to know if the particular chemical was identified, as this would help in pointing to the delivery system and maybe the persons responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I think this is a German report. These are German findings, so probably your question would be best addressed to our German partners. But as the Chancellor Merkel said yesterday, that Germany would inform its EU and NATO partners and discuss appropriate joint response in the light of these findings. This happened, actually. I mean, and the discussions that they launched in the Council are one of the expressions of that. So the German partners, of course, provided the input, informed us and shared the report, but the details, I will not be commenting on the details of the report, because it's a German-made product, and you should ask the German partners about the details.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions on this issue for Peter? I only see one hand raised. Not on this issue, I think. Is it on international affairs? Jack? No? Okay, Peter, thank you very much. So we will now open the floor to other issues, and indeed we'll take the question from Jack. Go ahead.
Hi guys, sorry, can you hear me? What's going on? Okay.
Yes.
I think maybe you can. Okay. Sorry, something's wrong with my computer. My question is about the EU Migration Pact. I'm wondering if we can have an update, if we know when that's going to be proposed, if I can have a reminder of what that pact is about, why it's necessary, and also if there's any context that we can be given about how the EU Migration Pact might be affected by the issues between Turkey and Greece and the EU in the Eastern Mediterranean. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I pass the floor to Adalbert.
Hello, Jack, and thanks for this question. So the new Pact on Migration and Asylum is going to be a new policy on migration, which will build on what has been achieved up to now, but which will offer a fresh start to a number of issues that have in the past created division in the EU, and it will attempt to create unity. It will do this especially by looking at migration policy from a comprehensive perspective and addressing the different elements of migration policy in an integrated way. It has been prepared through a very in-depth consultation process, which has taken place since the beginning of this mandate, including by consulting all member states, but also the European Parliament, national parliaments, and civil society, and it will be presented shortly. As to how it will be affected by current events and different aspects of developments in the migration policy over the last months, I'm afraid I cannot comment very much on the content of the pact at this point, but of course it will draw the lessons from everything that has been happening, not only this year, but also in the past years, that has been affecting migration policy in general.
Thank you very much, Adalbert. Are there other questions on this issue for Adalbert? Please only keep your hand raised if it is on this, or more generally on migration-related issues. Martina, I see you have your hand raised, so I suspect it's on this issue. Go ahead. You seem to have an issue connecting. No, now we see you.
Now we see you. Okay, thanks. Can you hear me as well?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. It is a related topic for Adalbert. I wonder if the Commission saw comments by the Greek shipping minister yesterday in a press conference. He said that the Greek authorities have successfully repelled more than 10,000 attempted migrants or asylum seekers at Greece's maritime borders this year, and said that it's actually done so for 3,000 cases in August alone. The minister, I think, was asked in what manner this was achieved, and he didn't respond, but he said that it was done in kind of a legal way that respects international law. Does the Commission have any more details about how the Greek authorities have been repelling thousands of migrants at sea in a way that is appropriate and legal according to European law and doesn't constitute a pushback? And have they requested any clarification of these statements, which were made on the record in Athens yesterday, to their counterparts in the Greek government? Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. What I can maybe recall about this issue and management of the external border of the EU in general is that this is primarily the responsibility of the member states to do so in line with EU law. And what this means is that any applied measures must be proportionate and must comply with the respect of fundamental rights and the rights resulting from the EU asylum law, in particular the principle of non-refoulement. It is, however, the national authorities that are really responsible for ensuring the respect of these obligations, and the Commission's role in this respect is to monitor the implementation of EU law. Now, we recognize, of course, the complex and the difficult situation at the Greek-Turkish border, which concerns not only Greece but Europe as a whole. And also in this context, we fully expect the Greek authorities to act in accordance with the law. And if, in case of any reports of breach of EU law, we expect national authorities to investigate with a view to establishing the facts and to appropriately follow up on any wrongdoing. Maybe I can also recall that there has been a pretty in-depth discussion in the Libe Committee of the European Parliament on the 6th of July about among others, the issue of how the external border in Greece is managed. And the Commission made, Commissioner Johansson made the Commission's position and the Commission's role in this respect very clear. She also recalled that in her view, it is we also need to. It is time to consider if we also need to put in place a new mechanism to monitor what is happening at the borders. So the Commission continues to monitor the way in which the border management is conducted in line with fundamental rights, and fully expects member states to do this in line with the law.
Martina, I see you have a follow-up. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yes, thank you. Just to follow up quickly on that last bit about the possibility, you were recalling what Commissioner Johansson said to the Parliament in July. Is it time to consider if the Commission should put in place a mechanism to monitor how that border is managed? Would you be able just to educate me on what that mechanism might look like, or what's possible within the existing laws and the toolbox that the Commission has in its hands? What could that mechanism potentially look like? And is there a discussion actually going on in the Commission about proposing such a mechanism to the Greek or indeed any other authorities at Europe's external borders?
I cannot for the moment preempt any future decisions or proposals. In general terms, maybe one thing that I can point to is the role of the EU agencies, and specifically the Fundamental Rights Agency and also the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, or Frontex. They have an important role to play in this context. There are specific legal obligations especially on Frontex, as to the protection of fundamental rights and the monitoring of fundamental rights obligations in the context of Frontex operations. And in fact, the two agencies, the Fundamental Rights Agency and Frontex, have recently agreed to work together to establish fundamental rights monitors, to also design their training program, and to integrate these monitors into Frontex activities. But again, as to any further steps, I'm not able to preempt those at this point.
Okay, thank you very much, Adalbert. I'm very conscious of the time because we have two guests who have been waiting for quite some time for a technical briefing, and they have other appointments afterwards. So I will see if there is a last question for Adalbert on this issue. And then we will have to close, but of course we will remain at your disposal for further questions. I see that, Noureddine, you have a question on migration for Adalbert.
Bonjour Eric.
Oui.
L'envoyé spécial des Nations Unies pour la Libye, dans sa présentation au Conseil de sécurité hier, vous m'entendez?
Vas-y. C'est bien sur la migration.
C'est bien sur la migration. Oui, sur l'immigration, oui, tout à fait, oui, tout à fait. Donc l'envoyé spécial, Madame Stephanie Williams, dans sa présentation au Conseil de sécurité hier, a parlé du retard des opérations de secours des États membres concernant les migrants qui partaient de Libye. Il y a un besoin de revoir certains mécanismes, de voir des États membres, de revoir certains mécanismes conformément à leurs obligations du droit international, que la Libye ne peut pas être considérée un pays safe ou un pays en sécurité pour les migrants. Pas plus d'autres, dans un très long paragraphe, parler du drame des migrants, s'agissant des opérations de secours qui sont en retard, s'agissant de de leurs conditions de détention dans des centres intérieurs de la Libye qui n'est pas un pays safe. Je voudrais voir si vous pouvez nous dire qu'est-ce que ça veut dire quand une fonctionnaire ou un diplomate international parle des retards des opérations européennes. Elle a parlé également de ceux qui sont refoulés en Libye, pourtant que ce n'est pas un pays en sécurité. Est-ce que vous avez un commentaire? Est-ce que vous pouvez nous donner un commentaire un peu plus précis sur ce qui se passe? Merci.
Merci Noureddine. Je n'ai malheureusement pas pu prendre connaissance de l'intervention spécifique à laquelle tu fais référence, donc je pense qu'il serait un peu difficile pour moi de me positionner ou de donner la position de la Commission par rapport à cette intervention-là en particulier. De manière générale, je peux peut-être rappeler quelques éléments de ce que nous faisons en Méditerranée centrale et notre position par rapport à la Libye. En tant que pays de destination et de transit pour la migration. Donc, tout d'abord, nous suivons de manière très attentive la situation en Méditerranée centrale et les mouvements migratoires qui ont lieu. Nous soutenons nos États membres dans l'exercice de leurs responsabilités, tout en rappelant que les opérations de sauvetage en mer ne relèvent pas de la compétence de la Commission européenne. C'est quelque chose qui a lieu selon des règles du droit international et sous la responsabilité des États membres. Nous pouvons aussi, je peux aussi rappeler que nous ne considérons pas effectivement la Libye comme un pays sûr pour la désembarcation de migrants.
Ça n'est que le test de l'alarme qui a lieu à 13h et qui vient nous rappeler d'ailleurs que nous allons devoir arrêter ce rendez-vous de midi pour passer au briefing technique. Donc, patience avant qu'Adalbert ne puisse finir sa réponse.
Voilà, merci. Peut-être sans aller dans le détail de cette question qui est vraiment très vaste, je peux peut-être juste rappeler que notre priorité en termes d'action dans la Méditerranée et dans le soutien à la fois à nos États membres et aux autorités compétentes de nos pays partenaires est de sauver des vies et d'assurer le plein respect des droits fondamentaux des personnes concernées, tout en assurant une bonne gestion des migrations vers l'Union européenne.
Merci Adalbert. Il est 13h. Nous allons maintenant clôturer ce rendez-vous de midi. Nous restons bien entendu à votre disposition pour des réponses à vos questions, y compris bien entendu on the record. Et nous allons passer maintenant au briefing technique sur les vaccins que je vous ai annoncés, qui sera en présence de Sandra Gallina, directrice générale adjointe à la DG Santé, et Kurt Vandenberg du cabinet de la présidente. Merci beaucoup.